Hello, and welcome to Season 5 of the Your Neurodiverse Relationship Podcast. I'm Jodi, Carlton, your host, and I'm a neurodiverse relationship expert. But like so many of you, I've been on my own journey of discovering and understanding neurodiversity, both in my personal life with my family members and even myself, and professionally as a therapist and now relationship coach to people around the world. I'm often asked, can neurodiverse partner relationships actually work? And the answer is absolutely they can. Just like any relationship, there are core variables that influence whether or not you'll thrive as a couple. Neurodiverse relationships are no different, but they have the added layer of being neurodiverse, where one or both partners is neurodivergent. So this season, I've got a lineup of couples and partners who are in neurodiverse relationships that are working. They get real personal with me about the challenges they have faced and how they've overcome those challenges in their relationships. Let's get started. Okay, this episode is part 2 of a podcast with Michael and Elise Daniel and also my special guest, Mona Kay. Now, Michael is the developer of the NeuroTranslator Tool, which is available online or in the App Store. And so today we're going to talk a little bit more about that actual tool and how he developed it. And he and Elise, his wife, are going to share how it was originally developed for them in their own marriage, which is neurodiverse, and to learn more and to hear more about their actual marriage and some of the challenges they faced, go back and listen to part 1 for sure. But today we're going to share a little bit more about this amazing tool that he's developed and how you can use it in your own relationship and how it's really transformed their marriage and how it can really benefit you in your own relationships. Let's move on into how you developed this tool and why, because we've covered a lot of the types of challenges and difficulties that couples and individuals who are autistic can have. So, Michael, tell us about how you came to develop this translator tool.
Yeah, it was definitely born out of pain, as you can imagine. So I one of my special interests happens to be AI. I don't know why. I don't know if it's, I don't know why, but it is. Yeah. So I've been using it mostly in my work just to really skyrocket productivity. But I had when I was deep in unmasking and I was in burnout and it was really tough between us, I started using AI to just help me gather my thoughts at first. A lot of the time I try and explain it as like someone will say something and then I'll have like a swirling pool of thoughts and I have to choose which one to grab. And sometimes that thought isn't the best thought to come out of my mouth, but it has to be. So anyway, I was using AI to do that, and I found when we'd have a misunderstanding or a disagreement or we were just on the different wavelengths, I would talk to the AI and try and work out what was really happening. Like, I have my version of reality. Elise has her version of reality. Can I see both versions in front of me and then try and bridge that gap? And so I used AI for a few weeks without even telling Elise. So we'd have a misunderstanding and then she might say something or I might say something that's really comes across as really hurtful to the other person without even knowing. And I would talk to the AI and it was like...
I've got an example. My mental health had bombed at one point and Michael walked into the room with a smile on his face and said, "Isn't it interesting? Your mental health is totally bombed and I'm probably the happiest I've ever been in my life." And walked out of the room.
Yeah.
I was just like...
Yeah. And like...
ouch.
In hindsight, like you say that out loud in hindsight with all the information and it's like obvious, like that is a terrible thing to say in that moment. But at the time, my autistic brain was just going,
Here's an observation.
Like, this is out of the ordinary. Yeah, this is weird. And I wonder why. And I've voiced that. But obviously without the neurotypical empathy and it didn't come across well. So I walked away not even knowing what I'd done. And then 3 days later, she said to me, "That really, really hurt me." And when you're told that and it's explained, it's like, of course it did. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it that way. But like, it's so hard to explain that you didn't mean something in a way that it was interpreted. When
intent
there's different neurotypes, it's like, well, then the person just has to believe you, basically, unless you develop the like understanding, which we're moving through. So I had been using this tool, AI, to help us with moments like that. I think there was another one where Elise said to me when we're having a misunderstanding, oh, I wish I had a husband with a neurotypical brain. And that was like piercing to me.
So I used it for that one.
So she
I went
used
and
it.
got the phone because I thought, I know him. He's going to go to sleep tonight, be lying in bed. He co-sleeps with our neurodivergent daughter, Olivia. He's going to be looking at her and thinking, oh my God, my marriage is over. I'm going to be seeing my daughter 50% of the time. Spiral, spiral, spiral. So I entered our conversation into the NeuroTranslator, and it said something along the lines of the neurotypical person is feeling a lack of understanding and connection. It's not that she is saying that she wants her husband to be replaced by a neurotypical person. She just wishes that he would understand her. So it's about the connection and the understanding, not a replacing of the person. So I just typed it in, passed him the phone, I think, and just waited.
Yeah. And it was just like, I read it and I was like, oh, like the emotion
He
just
said,
like,
thank you
it
for
just
that.
melts out. Like it was just like, oh, thank you for that. Like that. I needed that because that was going to be a terrible night. Yeah.
Which he's had nights like that. He's
Yeah.
had nights where he lies awake in bed the whole night thinking, oh my God, like this marriage, it's done.
Yeah.
I think that's so common. And I told Michael the first time we talked, I wish I had had a translator, and he actually found a post I had made or something I had said on the podcast, and he found that quote and he sent it to me. I had said that many times. In my 30-year marriage, we kept hurting each other with words, not meaning to. And so when you don't understand that your intent is not being received the way you want it to be, and you see somebody that you love hurting because of something you said, and it happens over and over again, like you guys said, it can destroy a relationship. It can
Absolutely.
It
Yeah.
can. And I have a similar story where, Mona, he found a post where you had said that when Michael first reached out to me. The timing was great because just, I think 2 weeks prior, I had been on a coaching call with a couple, and I often had referred to myself as a translator, and I'd say, okay, let me translate for each of you what's going on. And somebody had said, I need Jodi GPT on my phone. And then in comes Michael like a knight. So tell us more about this translator tool.
Yeah. So basically, like I said, I've been using it for like a good few weeks, probably about a month. And then one night I was chopping up veggies with my eldest daughter, and I just started crying like out of nowhere. And Elise came over and she was like, oh my God, like what's wrong? Like, are you crying? And I was like, I couldn't speak. I couldn't even get the words out of my mouth of what the thought was going through my head. And this was like deep in burnout and struggling with unmasking. And so I wrote down on a piece of paper what I was thinking because I just couldn't say it. And I wrote down something along the lines of, I just can't imagine a future where you'd want to be with me. And yeah, that was like really difficult. And she was like, oh, I thought you were dying or something.
And there, I'll just bring back in those ableist tendencies of his. Like when I was responding, I was saying, can you imagine if our roles were reversed and I was to say that to you? Like, how would you feel? I said, you're basically saying to me, because I have a disability, you're expecting me to leave. Like, can you hear how that sounds?
Oh, yeah, I was just finding it really tough going from one version of me to a different version with all of these different limitations that I had never experienced before. And I just kept thinking, like, she didn't sign up for this. So, yeah.
And on his side of things, I was going through a really hardcore grieving process as well, which probably plays into his feeling of that.
So that happened, and then we had a chat about it, and we had a good long chat about it, and it was all fine. I went to bed that night, and I thought, okay, and another day tomorrow. And I woke up the next day, and I'd organized a meeting with my boss at the company that I was working for, because I hadn't spoken to him in a few weeks, and I wanted to find out what work was in the pipeline for me to start working on. So I get on this Zoom call, and the subject of the meeting is like pipeline or whatever. And he pops up on the screen, and he's got a bit of an awkward smile on his face. So I didn't think anything of it. And he goes straight into this script of, hey, like, we're really sorry, but it doesn't make sense for the company to be paying full-time data guy at the moment, so we're going to have to let you go. And now my boss has made jokes in the past. So I started laughing out loud because I thought he was joking. And like, it's not just out loud, but like out loud. And it was, yeah. And then he's sort of sitting there with the same awkward smile on your face, like probably thinking, what the F is going on? And then HR popped up on the screen, and she was quite obviously sad. Like, she looked really upset. And the penny just dropped, and I was like, oh, this isn't a joke, is it? And my boss was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm really bad at these conversations, but no, it's not a joke. And he like said his little spiel about like, thank you so much. You've been great and blah, blah, blah. And then he left the conversation, and she started talking me through all the legalities and everything and what's going to happen from here on out. I could not hear a word she was saying. I was just thinking the whole time, I just laughed while losing my job. Like, what? Yeah, I came out and I told Elise, and she was like super supportive. She said, we'll work it out. Like, don't worry about it. I decided to take the day and not do anything. I just needed to not, because my brain will just dive into the next thing that it finds. And I didn't want to end up just diving into a job that I would then hate in 2 months, which is very like me with special interests. Like, I can get into a job or get into a special interest and be like, I absolutely love this. And then a week later, I'll be like, I hate this. So I left it a day. And then the next day I decided this AI stuff's been really helpful for us. Maybe I can release it. And if it helps 5 people, cool. So I put the most awful looking website together and put this AI tool up for free. And it was just like, put a post on Reddit and said, look, this is what happened with my misunderstandings in my relationship and my job, and went to sleep that night. And I woke up the next day and checked Reddit, and it had gone up to like 150 or 200,000 views overnight, and hundreds of comments flooding in. And I was like, holy crap. I came out and I said, Elise, like, it went viral. Like, wow, people absolutely love it. We did not expect the response that we were going to get. It was, it's like people sending me messages saying like, this has changed my life. I just had an argument with my partner and it completely resolved it in 5 minutes. People saying like, this is the best use of AI that they've ever seen. Like, just over and over, so much positivity. And like, that was great and overwhelming. And like, it was awesome. And then I logged into my email and I just saw notification after notification of like, your billing limit has been increased to X dollars. Your billing limit has been increased to X dollars. And I was like, oh, this is to run the tool. So like, it's not free to run. So I've released this thing for free thinking I'm going to help 5 people. Tens of thousands of people decided to use it. So my bill is like up to like $150 a day, which in Australia, that's almost $300 a day. And I've just gone from a job to no job to now paying for this thing. So I was like, oh God, what do I do? What do I do? And I had basically 2 choices that I could think of, which is I take it down, and I didn't want to do that because the positivity and like the comments would, how could I take that away now after just giving it out? So I was like, I'm going to have to create a paywall, and like, people aren't going to want to pay for it, but like, if they find it valuable enough, hopefully that people do. So I just put in 2 different options for payment, which was financial hardship or standard price. And financial hardship was just to like help me cover the cost of running the thing. And standard price is just like, if you have the financial means, like, it would help cover the cost and help me out as a solo developer who's just lost their job. And I was really surprised, actually. The autistic community, go figure, are like super honest, and a lot of people choose the standard price. So the Autistic Translator, the financial hardship is $2 a month US. So it's 50.
This is for the website.
Yeah,
and we should make a distinction that he's also made an app, which we'll talk about in a minute, which is different.
This is the initial tool that I built, the Autistic Translator. It's $2 a week. $2 a month, 50 cents a week, and then full price was $4.99 a month.
So very, very, very affordable.
A lot less expensive than therapy.
Yes. My rate is a lot higher than that, y'all.
Not a total replacement,
No,
will say.
Definitely not a replacement for therapy.
If you can afford both, do it. We have a therapist.
Yeah.
We use both.
Yeah, that's it. So yeah, that like I put the paywall in, and it was like a lot of people still use it. There's a bunch of members that pay each month and use the Autistic Translator, and I constantly get emails. I got an email, I think 2 days ago, from a woman saying, which was a sad outcome, but like she was just saying thank you, and she's so grateful that I built it, but unfortunately, with all of the pain and misunderstandings that she'd gone through in her relationship leading up to that point, the relationship ended. But even just to have someone say like, my relationship's ended, but thank you, like,
Helped her find closure.
yeah,
Well, yeah, I don't want to dismiss how valuable that is, even for people whose relationship has ended, because oftentimes that clarity comes later. I know it did for me after my marriage ended, when I realized that my ex-husband was autistic. And even today, memories will pop up for me. And now that I have this framework of autism, the lens, I can look back at what happened and get a very different understanding of it. And having a tool like this to even run it through that, it's so healing, even for the people whose relationships have ended.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I always say on the podcast, and even when I put out newsletters, that my ex-husband and I caused each other so much unintentional pain. And we didn't know we were doing it, just like the examples that you both gave. And it builds up. I mean, after even a year of doing that, you start to feel like, who am I with? And how come we just can't seem to get each other? And how come we keep hurting each other? Yeah. So everybody that I know that has used the Autistic Translator, now you're upgrading and you're changing the name, right? Has said, oh my gosh, they just can't believe how calm they feel after reading that their partner or their sibling or their coworker had a different thought, but didn't ever mean to hurt them.
I feel like it just diffuses the situation and takes the heat out of it.
Yeah.
By a third party providing both experiences. Not saying that one is more valuable than the other, or that one is right and one is wrong, but it's just a third party saying, this is one opinion and this isn't. It's different sometimes to the person you're in relationship with having that opinion, and you having that opinion. It just depersonalizes it.
Yeah, it's an external party to just really lay it out on the table and be like, yeah, like,
Validation
yeah.
for both parties.
There are emotions involved. Sometimes
Yeah.
trust is eroded. And I was just thinking back to the example that the two of you gave when you said, I just wish I had a husband who was neurotypical. Then to be able to hand that to him, it's one thing for you to say to him, I didn't mean it that way. I don't really want another partner, because now Michael felt hurt by your words and the way you may feel about him. But to be able to read this third party app translator saying, hey, this is what she actually meant, and you to be able to say, that is exactly what I meant. It depersonalizes it, like you said, and can really diffuse things.
Yeah.
That's why I think, Jodi, when couples come to you for coaching or me for coaching, or they come to any of the support groups that I facilitate, and they see that not only are they experiencing this, but other neurodiverse couples are experiencing it, or you're able to translate, and they're like, oh my gosh, I never thought about that perspective, or I never thought about it that way. That's what you're giving folks. No, it's not a replacement therapy or coaching, but it's another tool. And I love that you called it translator.
I think the wonderful thing about it as well is it depends how a couple or person wants to use it. And some people might not find it appropriate to use in real time, but we often do use it in real time, and it is an immediate diffuser. So you don't have to sit and ruminate. I'm talking for Michael now. I don't ruminate so much. But yeah, you don't have to sit with those feelings. For me, I often feel like I'm holding. I just hold it, because if I address it immediately, he won't be able to handle the heat of my emotions. So I often hold until I'm ready, but I feel like I'm holding a world. And I just think that's what I get to. I think, oh my God, I'm holding everything for everyone, and who's holding me? That's my side of it.
It's too much. And it can also cause physical illnesses. It can cause mental health challenges. And I love that you're introducing this tool that is really inexpensive for folks that want to use it. And can you tell us a little bit about the name change and the app and what's next?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the future of the website, and just tell us where we can direct people or send people.
Basically, I've been listening to you both and on your podcasts for a while, and just to help me and our relationship, like getting more of an understanding. And I decided to reach out to you both. And then Mona, you were kind enough to hook me up with a bunch of people in the space. And Jodi, you also invited me to that professional working group. And the thing that kept popping up was, this is amazing, but it needs to be an app. And that like, I got that comment over and over and over. So I decided I was going to transform it into an app. Another question that kept coming up was, are you looking to introduce other neurotypes into this? We know there's a huge co-occurrence with ADHD and autism. So I've been developing for the last 3.5 months, coming up 4 months now, a mobile app called NeuroTranslator. And it allows you to translate between neurotypical, autistic ADHD and autistic ADHD at the moment. And it's more of so initially the tool was just like this is putting your scenario and it will bridge the gap. This new mobile app called NeuroTranslator, you have a chat back and forth with it. So if you put in, this situation happened, and it gives you a response, you can dig in deeper and say, okay, but that doesn't make sense to me because this happened, and it will then use that context and it will respond back, and you can just go further and further until you've resolved whatever you've got going on. And yeah, I think it's a huge upgrade from the Autistic Translator. And our son, he called us one night and he was like, oh, I just want to let you know, because he's in the testing group, and he called me one night and he said, I just want you to know that the NeuroTranslator really helped me tonight. And I was like, oh, awesome. Why? He's like, because he's ADHD, and he had been seeing this girl, and he said his social battery was dead and she wanted to stay over, but he just wanted to be alone and he didn't know how to tell her.
He was overwhelmed. He had work the next day and he just wanted to go to the gym, come home, recharge, and feel a bit better before going into work.
Yeah. So he said, so I went into the toilet and got the NeuroTranslator out, and I started saying, like, this is the situation. Like, how do I ask her to leave that's not going to crush her? And it gave the response and took him through the steps of, like, this is how you validate her feelings, and a step-by-step of what you should say and how you could go about it. And he said, so I went out there and did it, and it was the best it's ever gone. Like, she was still upset because, like, no, like when you want to spend the night but yeah, she understood, okay, like, you need to just recharge, and it's not personal. It's just...
Yeah, he didn't just come across as a dick that didn't want her there, basically.
Yeah. Because, when you're overwhelmed and you're struggling, the thing that comes out of your mouth,
I want you to leave,
isn't always the best thing for the situation. Yeah.
Right.
So
Well, that's such a great personal story. And I'm in the test group as well, Mona. I guess you probably are too. And so I've run it through quite a few scenarios and been able to give you some feedback, Michael. So I know that there are people who are listening are thinking, well, what are your credentials though? Are you qualified to do this? So I believe that you are, because you've shared your credentials with me. But can you tell people a little bit about, you mentioned just briefly about Database Guy when you got fired. So tell everybody a little bit about your background and why you're qualified to do this.
So I've been a data analyst for over a decade now, and in the last 3 years, I've moved over to become an AI engineer due to my special interest in AI. And combining that with the special interest that I developed with autism and reading every book available just led me to this point, basically. And being able to give the AI the right data, because AI is all about what it's given. You can't just go to AI and say something and expect the perfect response. It's really dependent on, it's like a person, like whatever their background is going to shape how they respond to the world. It's the same with AI. When you give it the right data, it will respond in the way that you're looking for. So I've used my skills as a data analyst to really go through all of the neuroaffirming data that's available, inject that into the AI, and also just give it instructions that I know will provide neuroaffirming responses. So yeah, it's just that's my background. I mean, the feedback speaks for itself. If people were coming back and saying this is awful, like, it said this. I have not had one person come back and say this gave me a terrible response. Not one. Like, it is. Even I am surprised by how well it
Oh,
works.
it's
Like,
beautiful. Can I just add, one of the things that I love about the NeuroTranslator is that Michael's also brought in a part where when you add your connections, so you can add the people that you think you'll be using it for the most. And now you can also add a little bit of additional information that the NeuroTranslator will remember about them. So for example, when I add Michael in, I add that he's ADHD and autistic, but I also add that he hyperfixates on work. He's currently building the NeuroTranslator. Sometimes things like parenting, housework, and presence is an issue in our relationship. And I find it hard whether to determine to bring things up or not, because I am very aware that it impacts his executive function and adds to his overwhelm. So that's a balance for us. So it remembers all of that. So then when I go to speak to the translator and say, this just happened between Michael and I, it already has all of that really important information. It knows us, essentially. It has us down to a T because of its ability to remember that. And it's the same, like, it knows that without me having to say anything, it knows that our eldest is our foster child and that he has rejection sensitivity and all of the things that are also important on top of the neurotype that shape our interactions.
it really comes back to, like, if you know an autistic person or an ADHD person, one autistic person and one ADHD person. Like, we're not all the same. We all have our backgrounds, our traumas, our upbringing that shape and mold with the neurotype. So yeah, that's why.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to say it's like a relationship counselor, but because it has all of that extra information, it can give you such a detailed explanation or advice, and it really knows you because of all of that.
That's I'm so glad you shared that, because you can train it to know you and to know your family and to know whether it's your coworkers or the dynamics. Yeah. And like you said, it's not a person, it's a translator. And so there's the human element of it that I think we've all, for the most part, I can't assume, but I think most people know that anytime you're interacting with technology, it's not 100%. Even if you Google something and get results, it's not 100%. And so the just remembering that the translator may be slightly off, it still, I think, provides so much feedback and so much information to help people understand what their partner or what that other person is thinking or experiencing, that it at least can then contribute to a conversation about it and can continue the conversation instead of shutting it down. Mona, what were you wanting to add there?
No, it was funny when Michael first contacted me, I didn't think he was real.
That's me too.
I forget who I was with. I might have been with my daughter. I don't know. And I shared that this person had contacted me and he created the Autistic Translator and he wanted to know if we could meet. And I'm like, and then he said he posted something on Reddit. So the first thing I did is I went to Reddit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I'm seeing all this positive feedback and this has changed my life and all the things that Michael talked about. And I'm like, I have to meet this man, because it literally would have been my dream come true if I had had this in my 30-year marriage. It would have been, I think, a total game changer. Not that we wouldn't have gotten divorced. I don't know that it would have changed that, but reducing the unintentional hurt. So I really want to encourage folks that are listening or viewing the podcast to think about, even if you try it out for a month, to look at how it can change the way you respectfully communicate with each other, how you understand each other's perspectives, and how you give each other grace. And instead of getting angry like I did all the time when I felt like I wasn't understood, to come from a place of curiosity. And I almost think like that's the translator's like second name. NeuroTranslator curiosity. It's like, it made me want to look further. I put in several people who are in my life. Some are ADHD, some are ADHD, and some are autistic. And it was just like, the information I was getting back was like, yeah, I kind of knew that already because I've been doing this work for a long time. I wouldn't have known it 10 years ago.
I think when I listen to you, Mona, I hear a lot of Michael and myself when you talk about your relationship in the past. And that's what makes me really grateful that you do what you do. But the difference is the translator, knowledge of the neurodiversity in our relationship. And because of that knowledge, a willingness for both of us to work on it. And that's how I see the difference between you and your relationship. When we can see ourselves back there, I can hear it. I'm like, oh shit, that like would have been us. But our path is changing away from that because we have supports that you just didn't have.
Yeah, and like to give you a bit of an idea of like how it's helped us, I'd probably say about 6 months ago, we were questioning like, if we don't get off this path, we can see where it's going.
Yeah,
Like,
not right now, but in 10 years, if we stay here, that's not a working relationship.
And now we're at a point now using the translator and going to couples therapy who is experiencing neurodiverse relationships, I have to add.
Yes,
We've
got
been
some stories on that.
Been to couples therapy that has been detrimental before, but yeah, you really got to make sure that you get someone that's like you both that have experience with neurodiversity.
I've got a really good example of how detrimental like therapy can be when they're not aware of a neurodiverse person in the relationship. When I was pregnant with our second daughter, for a variety of reasons, things were coming to a head in our relationship and things were not good. I was going to have a home birth, which I'd never had a vaginal birth before. I had an emergency cesarean section with my first daughter. And I was really leading in the months and weeks up to the birth, wanting Michael to emotionally support and hold me. And the more I tried to draw him in, the further away he got. So we did some individual counseling and then we did a session together. My God, it was a train wreck. So we didn't know about Michael's neurodivergence and therefore the relationship counselor didn't either. But one of the activities was to write something along the lines of to write down 2 things that we would want.
That we don't like
about each other, essentially. So Michael wrote down for me that it bothered him when I said things like, I don't like the way you've packed the dishwasher, or can you pack it differently? And so the therapist ran with that and she said, so you feel like Elise is a bit of a nag at times. And Michael said, yeah. And that, I already had depression at this point and was struggling with our relationship. It was 2 weeks before I birthed our baby. And that was news to me. I didn't know that Michael had experienced me as a nag. And it was a real shock because I didn't see myself in that way. Given the fact that we were at therapy though, and if I responded and said, really, I just felt like it would look like I was not allowing him to have his experience. So I just allowed the conversation to continue. The second thing that he said was that he felt that I was a bit of a pessimist. Now that one really hurt because not only was that a shock to me, but I was probably under the impression that Michael would have actually seen me as an optimist and loved that about me. So that was really confusing to me. Then she came over to me and said, what do you want to change about Michael? And I said, I just want him to be his authentic self. And her response to me was, he is his authentic self. This is him. That concluded the session. So when I then birthed a couple of weeks later, and about 2 months into my postpartum, I brought it up and I said, I want you to know that this really hurt me. And we talked through it and he said, I actually don't know why I said either of those things. They're not actually how I feel at all. And since finding out about Michael's autism and alexithymia, where he has difficulty feeling his emotions and expressing the way he's feeling and that sort of thing, we realized that he was in a situation where he was asked a question from a therapist and he felt a lot of pressure and stress. He couldn't draw down how he felt. So he thought, what do people normally say in these therapy situations?
It's the swirling thoughts thing where, okay, how do I respond to this?
He picked one, he said it, The therapist then affirmed and gave a positive response to him and said, oh, yes, so you feel like she nags. So he rolled with,
I was like, well, that must have been the right response.
that must have been right. Keep going. So that did a lot of damage in the lead up, and I held it for a long time. It was painful.
I'm glad you shared that, Elise, because that is a really, really good example of how therapists can just not realize that they're making things worse when they don't know that there is neurodiversity here. But I think whether there's neurodivergence or not, it's one of the first questions I would ask would be, okay, what does that mean to you? What does that mean to you? And just kind of help dig around to help a client articulate what they're actually saying and what they actually mean. And then it would become pretty obvious at some point that Michael had no idea what he actually meant by that.
Yeah.
So, and that's why, but non-neurodiverse aware therapists sometimes don't realize that what someone says is not necessarily their authentic self, but it doesn't mean they're lying. It just means they don't even know how to articulate what they think.
I mean, at the time, I was like, I thought that's what I thought. And then, like, I had no idea that I had hurt her feelings. In my head, I was like, oh, like, how'd you find that? And she was like, I hated it. And I was like, okay. So anyway, so fast forward, like, we'd gone through all that. Yeah, we were 6 months ago in a really bad place. We've been using the NeuroTranslator now for a good few months, and we are now on the path of like trying for our next child. So that gives you a bit of an idea of like
And we were not having sex.
And you got to do that to try to have
Yeah.
your next
You do.
child. So things have come along for the two of you. That's great to
Yeah.
hear.
yeah.
Good deal. So where do people go to find this tool? Is the Autistic it's still live and working on the website, right?
So the Autistic Translator is the initial tool. It can be found at autistictranslator.com, and that's still up and running. I expect that by the time this podcast comes out, that the NeuroTranslator app will be on the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. So you'll be able to type in NeuroTranslator and get it from there. So yeah, it's just a matter of time.
That's wonderful. I'd love to see you on lots of different social or media channels talking about this. I'm definitely thankful for people like you with these amazing minds and innovative types of entrepreneurial even drives, and that you have the capacity to do something like this. And that in of itself speaks to why neurodiversity is so important for us as human beings.
Absolutely.
And why neurodiversity is not a disorder. It's not a disease. It's not an illness. It comes with its challenges, but it also comes with its major upsides as well.
I just want to say thank you to both of you for responding, even though you didn't think I was a real person.
Can I add to that story? Because I thought it was spam too. And then I went straight to the Reddit thread, just like Mona. And then she and I were on a call together a week or two later. I can't remember why, but we were on Zoom, and one of us, I don't even know who it was, one of us said something about, hey, did you get an email from this guy, Michael? And I was like, I think you asked me.
I did ask you. Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I did. And so then we started comparing notes, and she's like, oh, I think he's really legit. I'm going to meet with him. And I'm like, oh, I got to meet with him too.
Yeah, thank you so much for all your support and feedback. It's really, really important that this tool takes in as much feedback from as many different neurotypes as possible and as many different experiences as possible, because at the end of the day, I just want it to help as many people as possible.
And also thank you to the neurodiverse community, because you have built this tool based on what they have asked for, and you have changed it and guided it. Yeah. It's been so heavily guided by what the people have been saying that they want. And when this new NeuroTranslator app is released, the hope is that people continue to give their feedback and ask for exactly what it is that they need and want. And Michael will do his best to accommodate those.
Knows what it will become as AI continues to evolve. But yeah, like Elise said, I'm looking for feedback. So if you've got it, I want to hear about it, and I will do my best to make it as good as I can.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you both. And Elise, did you have anything else, any last words to add as well from a neurotypical wife's perspective?
I think something that I've learned as I've learned more about the different neurotypes is just really trying to have one foot in your own experience and your own camp and another foot in the camp of the neurodiverse person, and just leaning into that empathy while also holding your own experience. So at times I've been hurt by Michael, and I've logically known that it's just a neurodiverse, neurotypical miss, but I still allow myself to feel the feelings and the pain while also having a foot in Michael's camp of realizing how difficult it is for him as well. So I feel like, yeah, we can hold both. It's not a competition. And that's what I would say.
That actually raises a good point, which is I see a lot in the community of like an us versus them camp. Like, why do neurotypicals have to do this? Or why do autistic people do this? And it's like a tribal battle. And I honestly, my opinion is that you can't build from that place. There's no point to just pointing fingers and placing blame on the other neurotype and expecting them to change the way they are, because at the end of the day, it's a completely different brain. You can't, so building that understanding is key. And it's evident in our own relationship that that's the only way forward.
I agree. Mona, you said double empathy. It's really recognizing that each side's perspective is very valid. And it's like to speak to what you're saying, Michael, it's like the tall people thinking they're better than the short people. It's like, that doesn't get us anywhere. If we are who we are, we all matter, and we all contribute in a very positive way to our world as a whole. Mona, do you have anything else you'd like to add? Any last words of wisdom?
No, I just wish I had this at the beginning of my marriage.
Yeah, same. You and I both
Sorry,
on the deep
Amanda.
side of that. But you know what? I'm happy to have laid under that bus for everybody, and be able to share with hindsight what I've learned about my own marriage and my own relationships, and then I'm just thrilled that the next generation. I'm thrilled for my own children, for your children, that because they're autistic, they're ADHD, and I'm thrilled for them that they're going to have all this education and knowledge and awareness and tools like yours to make their lives successful as they enter their minor entering adulthood now. And you have a much younger, you have older and younger. And then Mona, you've got a daughter who's a good bit older as well. Well, not a good bit older, but she's
28,
into adulthood.
Yeah. I think this is a paradigm shifter. So thank you both.
That's a wrap for today's episode. Be sure to subscribe or follow the podcast so you won't miss any of these amazing interviews. And as always, if you're benefiting and enjoying this podcast, please give us a review. It really helps other people know that this podcast is really beneficial and worth listening to. Thanks for watching on YouTube or tuning in to your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to visit me online at jodicarlton.com for more resources. I have assessment quizzes, educational articles, courses, and more. And if you have any questions, just reach out to my team at gethelp@jodicarlton.com. Until next time.